If anything, the work itself is about the art market. And so getting a sort of peek beneath the curtain as to the process of bringing a work like that to auction actually reveals a lot about the dynamics of the market itself, and I think speaks to the mechanics of what makes the artwork powerful. And for me, it was a lesson in trusting gut and instinct, and it was a reminder that pushing the envelope a little bit can be sometimes the most rewarding thing.
Sotheby's is the temporary custodian of some of the world's most rare, remarkable and coveted art and objects. In each episode, we'll be exploring the significance and journey of an extraordinary work told by those who know it best. This is The Specialist. No other artwork from the 21st century has provoked scandal, sparked imagination and upended the very definition of contemporary art, like Maurizio Cattelan's Comedian. Its debut at Art Basel Miami Beach in December 2019 captivated the world. On today's episode, David Galperin, Sotheby's Vice Chairman, Head of Contemporary Art for the Americas, examines the complexities and challenges that come from bringing such an ineffable and metaphysical artwork to auction. An artwork that dares to ask, who sets the value of art? Let's join David now with more.
Comedian is an artwork by Maurizio Cattelan, which is a banana duct taped to a wall. That is the physical manifestation of the artwork. The actual artwork itself is a certificate of authenticity from the artist, along with a detailed set of installation instructions. Cattelan is a conceptual artist, one of the most, I would say, notorious and infamous conceptual artists of the past 30 years. He's an artist who, over the course of his career, has in many ways challenged our perception of art itself. His work has dealt with many of the biggest questions that plague and face contemporary art, and has done it in a very pranksterish way. The way that his work subverts notions and ideals of art making and does it from within the system itself is what makes it so successful. Cattelan had very publicly announced his retirement upon his career retrospective at the Guggenheim Museum and almost retreated from public view for several years. It wasn't until Art Basel Miami Beach in December 2019 when he put Comedian on the wall of Emmanuel Perrotin's booth that Cattelan was back, and back with a vengeance. People were up in arms, but at the same time, everyone flocked to see it. It ricocheted around the world so quickly that by the second day, there were hordes of people who had come to see it, and they actually had to take the work down because it was a security risk. I mean, first, of course, I thought it was entirely absurd, and it was a joke. That's your first reaction, and then you begin to realize or suspect just what Maurizio Cattelan is after. I mean, of course, it is a joke. That's the whole point. But it is so much more than just that. It is profound and rigorous, and its very kind of baseline simplicity is what I think gives it its immense power and universality. There were 3 versions or 3 certificates that were available for purchase. All versions of it had very quickly sold to some very brave collectors for the what's now become notorious price of $120,000. Now, the price was a big part of the story because without the price tag, the work's provocation is moot. It's very rare that a price is actually part of the very fabric of the artwork itself. Fast forward a couple of years, the Comedian kind of recedes into memory as this ridiculous moment in the history of the contemporary art market, remembered by many, but not necessarily so often discussed. I get a phone call from a collector who says to me, "What would you think about bringing the Comedian to auction?" And immediately I was hooked. This is something that would clearly make a splash if it was done correctly. I think that when Cattelan chose to show Comedian for the first time within an art fair context, that was a very intentional decision. The very insertion of this into the commercial system through the art fair is a pivotal part of its nature as an artwork. And so what was interesting to me is that auction is the other blatantly commercial platform that greases the wheels of the art market. And so in a way, the work could have a new life through its participation within the auction machine. It was immediately clear that we needed this object in our sale. My biggest question was, what is it worth? It was hard for us to align as a team on its value. You know, the $120,000 price tag was crazy, I guess, at the time. But why was it $120,000 and not $100,000 or $150,000 or $250,000 or $1 million? You know, Cattelan's works have sold for many millions of dollars over. So what's different about this one? Is it that it's conceptual? Is it that it has a certificate? That's actually not so groundbreaking. You know, we've sold many conceptual works of art for multiples of that price. What was dumbfounding about it was, of course, the absurdist nature of the banana duct tape to a wall. This is a work that is worth whatever somebody's willing to pay for it. And without knowing that, without having any comps, without having anything tangible to really assign value, that made it that much harder to actually determine what we were willing to risk on the opportunity to sell an artwork like this. The owner wanted a guarantee. Try going to your executive management and asking them to put a capital commitment on a banana duct tape to a wall. That was a fun one. Now, how do you estimate an artwork like this? It had sold once for $120,000. Works by Maurizio Cattelan have sold at auction for over $10 million. You can buy a banana for $1. So where in that spectrum does one price this artwork? And to be honest, we toyed around with a number of different estimates before we landed on $1 to $1.5 million. We thought about somehow pegging the estimate to the original sale price of $120,000, somehow pegging the estimate to the price of a banana, pegging the estimate to the price of a masterpiece, $100 million. And we knew that it was somewhere within that very wide spectrum. Where we landed at $1 to $1.5 million was really guided by this idea of this being the $1 million banana. You know, there was something so pure about that. There was something so radical. We knew that it would capture the attention not only of the market, but of the world. Ultimately, it really didn't matter what the estimate was. Now, my perception of that value versus how we get there is an entirely different thing. In order for this to work, we knew that it had to be a total surprise. And in order for that to be the case, that meant nobody could know about it. There was a very task force within the company. Part of the strategy was to do this global promotional tour. We had the comedian on view every day in a different Sotheby's location around the globe. That's not something we can usually do because works can't apparate between cities. Luckily for us, because of the nature of the object, we had this opportunity to stage this very ambitious and very unconventional touring campaign. When we announced it, it did come as a complete shock to the market. People were, as we intended, up in arms about the estimate. You know, how could this artwork be $1 million? But I was also hearing excitement, enthusiasm. We could remember what we loved about art to begin with, right? This sense of wonder, this curiosity, this confusion, this newness, along with a sense of the unpredictable and the unexpected. We had no idea how this was going to go. And so from the moment that we signed the contract, I was frankly terrified. You know, you're staking your claim on the fact that a banana duct taped to a wall can galvanize an entire market. But the minute it started to catch fire, the pieces started to click. And you know what? In an auction, you try to plan everything out as carefully as you can. You take all of the factors and inputs and you try to engineer everything so carefully and so precisely. But oftentimes, you get lucky. The auction was in November 2024 at Sotheby's in New York. There were people that were in the room that never come to our auctions. You know, young people in banana t-shirts. The crowd was kind of electric. And I remember that day I was panicked. I knew it was going to sell. I just didn't know how it was going to go. Having had the press that we had over the course of several weeks, now was the time to deliver. and the stakes were high and the pressure was on. As the lot opened, I looked around the room and I'd never seen so many phones raised up, videotaping the proceedings. I mean, it was as if we were at a rock concert. All you see is like the crowd of glowing iPhone screens. It was wild. And then the bidding started and, we had a bunch of people on the phones. We had bidders in the room. It was going 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, kind of stalls. A few more bids, kind of stalls. I'm like, okay, $2 million. That's okay. I was hoping for more, but it's still a good result. And then it just started going. There were 2 people that just really went all the way. And ultimately, we had an all-in sale price of $6.2 million. So the buyer of the artwork received the certificate, installation instructions, the ability to exhibit the work, as well as a banana and a roll of duct tape. It was auction magic. That's kind of the moment that you hope for when you start this journey. You never know what's going to happen, but when it clicks, it just clicks. You can factor in all of the tangibles, but the beauty of what we do is that we live and thrive on the intangible. So take everything you know and throw it out the window, because nothing is ever going to go how you think it's going to go. And that's the beauty of the art market, because what we operate on is curiosity, imagination, desire. These are things that you cannot quantify.
Thank you for joining us on The Specialist. This has been brought to you by Sotheby's Financial Services. SFS offers asset-based loans to unlock the value of your fine art, automobiles, and other luxury collectibles. To step further into the world of Sotheby's, visit any one of our galleries, which are open to the public. Go to sotheby's.com to find out more.